Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started with the formal portion of our evening. Good evening to all of you. My name is Lauren Craner. I'm president of the International Republican Institute, and I want to welcome all of you to IRI's Women's Democracy Network Gathering and Awards Dinner. We're very honored to have with us this evening the ambassadors of Bahrain, Croatia, Georgia, Macedonia, and Iraq. We have many distinguished Americans with us this evening, too numerous to mention. You all know who you are. But let me extend a special welcome to Republican Party co-chair Jan Larimer, to former Undersecretaries of State Pat Harrison and Paula Dobryansky, to Ambassador and Mrs. Michael Kozak, and to our friends from AID, Mail Bureau, DRL, and the National Endowment for Democracy, which funds our Women's Democracy Network. Also attending tonight's events are IRI board members Cheryl Halpern, Connie Newman, Allison Fortier, Frank Fahrenkopf was with us earlier, Mike Costi, and our Vice Chairman Peter Madigan will also be here. Most of all, we welcome our guests from overseas, a remarkable group of women who form the core of IRI's Women's Democracy Network. Begun in 2006, the brainchild of IRI Executive Vice President Judy Van Rest, the WDN fosters relationships among women, political, civic, and economic leaders from around the world. Our awards this evening are named for another female pioneer, Jeane Kirkpatrick, a leading foreign policy professor and thinker and an IRI board member. She was the first woman to serve as America's ambassador to the United Nations, and there she advanced America's interests with erudition, wit, and courage. She also noted proudly that during and after her service, many other countries began sending women as their UN ambassadors. Less well known is that her very first book, the very first of many, was entitled Political Women. It was published in 1974, and the book's flyleaf says that making it in the political arena is a tough battle, doubly so for women. Her book examines the experiences, triumphs, and costs to women who have chosen to run for elective office, and we still use its lessons in IRI's work today. We're delighted that we'll be honoring this evening a close friend of Dr. Kirkpatrick's, Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. IRI board member Connie Newman will introduce her formally later, but I just want to state how privileged we are that the first Hispanic woman and the first Cuban-American woman elected to Congress is with us this evening. IRI knows Congresswoman Ros-Lehtinen well, for she is a staunch ally of those seeking liberty, be they in Iraq or Zimbabwe or Cuba. First this evening, we will honor Iraq's Women's Leadership Institute, which IRI helped found in 2005. It has since helped mentor current and future women leaders of Iraq on a broad range of issues. I don't know if you've seen it, but last week's Newsweek cover was a story entitled Victory at Last, the Emergence of a Democratic Iraq. The article states that the key to building stable societies is to create a web of institutions, and it goes on to note the important role that women's groups have played in building this web in Iraq. None more so than WLI. And I know that as the results of yesterday's Iraqi elections become clear, we'll learn of WLI's increased successes. To present our first award to the Iraqi Women's Leadership Institute, I want to introduce to you IRI board member Allison Fortier. She's a good friend of many, many years. I first knew her when she worked at the National Security Council under Frank Carlucci and Colin Powell, a position to which she brought great experience from her time on the staff of the House International Relations Committee. She later joined Rockwell and is now a vice president at Lockheed. Over the years, Allison has lent her considerable talents to IRI on issues as diverse as Russia, the Middle East, and fundraising, and she has been an especially strong supporter of our Women's Democracy Network. Ladies and gentlemen, Allison Fortier.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you and welcome to everyone. Congresswoman, we're so glad you could be here tonight, and fellow board members. Indeed, the Women's Democracy Network does mean a great deal to me. I've done a number of activities with IRI, but I think the most meaningful for me have been the workshops in which I've been able to participate, most recently in Lima, Peru in November. And I see Mary, and I think Raquel, are you there? I don't have my glasses on. I didn't get a chance to say hello to you. And Gladys and Rubiella, I didn't get a chance to say hello to you yet, but I did talk to Maybell from Bolivia. The courage of women around the world who dedicate themselves to democracy is inspiring and incredible. And I believe, as Jeane Kirkpatrick did, and it's a great honor to be able to present an award in her memory, that without respect for women and without the participation of women in the political process, there is no democracy. Certainly, one of the emerging democracies where we've seen tremendous struggle, tremendous opportunity, and incredible courage has been in Iraq. And I'm very honored tonight to dedicate the award, one of this year's awards, to Dr. Sundas Abbas. I'm very sorry that she couldn't be here tonight. She's not feeling well. And believe me, this is a woman that very few things can hold back. So we'll wish her a speedy recovery. She may be here later in the week. She is the director of the Women's Leadership Institute in Iraq. And this institute was encouraged by IRI starting in 2005. And when you look at the statistics of what Dr. Sundas Abbas has done as a director, she, this year alone, has held more than 500 events, has trained more than 14,000 women in Iraq, which is unbelievable. And the impact of this is impressive. In the 2009 Iraqi Provincial Council elections, 40% of the women winning seats were trained by the Institute. So these training sessions here are very important, the training sessions in country. And it is important for women to come together and network and learn the training. She has been honored many, many times. We are not the first, and I'm sure we won't be the last. She won she was a recipient of the International Women of Courage Award from U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. And I'm sure that Paula Dobriansky, where are you, Paula? There you are. I'm sure you were there for that event, and I know you dedicated a great deal of your effort to helping the women in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. So I think it's very important that we recognize the courage and the accomplishments of these women. And I know the ambassador had planned to be here tonight, but we are very pleased that he can accept this award on behalf of Dr. Sundas Abbas. And I would just like to say a few brief words about the ambassador from Iraq to the United States, who is a very distinguished individual as well. His Excellency Shamir Shakir Sumedi was appointed ambassador from Iraq to the United States in April of 2006. And he came here with a very impressive resume prior to serving as Iraq's ambassador to the United States. He served as Iraq's permanent representative to the United Nations, and prior to that he was Minister of Interior in Iraq, and he was a member of the Governing Council. And there's something very appropriate here, because I know that the theme of this Women's Democracy Network meeting is communications, and you have a great deal of experience, Mr. Ambassador, in communications, having founded the Iraqi Telecoms and Media Commission and the Public Broadcasting Institution. So it's very appropriate that you should be here tonight. And also, we wish the people of Iraq Godspeed. Very important elections have just occurred. You told me that 62% participated, which is indeed remarkable, and we certainly wish for the people of Iraq the speedy formation of a government, because you have many, many important tasks, including economic development and reform in Iraq, important challenges ahead, and we wish you well. So if you would please join me on the stage to accept the award on behalf of Dr. Sundus Abbas.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm proud to accept this award on behalf of Sundus. But as I'm sure she would have said, she would have accepted it on behalf of all Iraqi women. Yesterday, the Iraqis went to cast their votes in historic elections, and I know that the majority of those 62% of eligible voters who turned up were women. Women have led the vote in every election we've had since we had the chance to elect our leaders. It's remarkable. Only today, in the Washington Post, if you looked at it, there was a story about a young, well, relatively young family, two women in their 20s, having lost both their parents to violence, are struggling to bring up their kids and their siblings in very hard circumstances. And yet they had the time and the determination, despite all the threats and the violence, to go to the polling station to try and cast their votes. We have stories of heroism in everyday life, and at every level. And we are absolutely in awe of our own womenfolk, not only in the home, but in every field. And I was proud to participate in the setting up of the transitional administrative law, and later on the Constitution, which stipulated that 25% of our parliament at least should be women. So we see a great role for our women. Sundus is a typical example. She's not the only one, but I'm sure she exemplifies the heroism of Iraqi women and the potential of Iraqi women. And I really thank you so much for honoring her, because in honoring her, you are honoring all Iraqi women, and you are honoring my country. Thank you.
I would now like to introduce IRI board member Connie Newman, who will present the next award. Connie herself, in so many ways, has served as a mentor to me. She's going to kill me for telling this story, but it really is indicative of the kind of woman she is. Think of the time in the United States some 40 years ago when the young Mrs. Newman, who, though she had a law degree, could only find employment as a clerk typist at the Department of Interior. Through diligence, discipline, and applying her considerable talents, Connie Newman ultimately became a presidential appointee 7 times, with her last post as Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs from 2004 to 2005. She was President Bush's G8 personal representative on Africa, played an advisory role to the Secretary of State, and guided the operation of the U.S. diplomatic establishment in the countries of sub-Saharan Africa. She has been a business owner and serves on numerous boards, and she has given IRI so much of her time and support by participating in multiple programs. Talk about a role model for women. I am proud to introduce my friend Connie Newman.
Good evening. Did she say 4 or 40? You know, this is a very, very special time for this event. I think you probably all know that this is International Women's Day. And it's perfect for us on this day to recognize women from around the world who have shown outstanding leadership in the just causes they fight for. Tonight, we have a very special woman that we are honoring. The Honorable Ilyana Ros-Lehtinen is a true champion of democracy, a true champion of women's rights to fully participate in political life. She learned from an early age that democracy and freedom can demand the highest forms of sacrifice, but in the end, they are among the most noble causes to support. We know so much about what she has accomplished, but many of us probably don't know from whence she came. So I hope you don't mind, I'm going to tell a little of it. It began when she was a child and her family was forced to flee Cuba's communist dictatorship and find refuge in the United States. As an adult, she turned her passion for education into professional calling and founded and served as a principal and teacher of a private bilingual school in Florida. From there, she went on to a series of firsts. Remarkable first when in 1982, she was the first Hispanic woman elected to the Florida State House of Representatives. Her rise through politics continued with her 1986 election to the Florida State Senate, and then in 1989 to United States Congress. She went on to more firsts as the first Hispanic woman and then the first Cuban American elected to Congress, where she proudly served Florida's 18th congressional district since 1989. That wasn't 40 years, though. And her commitment to the people of Florida has been returned because she has come back, and the last time with 62% of the vote. Throughout her career, she's been one of the leading voices for democracy and human rights in Cuba and throughout the world. As ranking member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and previously as chair of the Subcommittee on the Middle East and Central Asia, she has worked to ensure that these issues remain at the top of the U.S. agenda. Throughout her service, whether at the state level, representing the 18th District of Florida in the United States House of Representatives, she has been a champion of women's rights, especially as a strong advocate for programs that address the serious problem of violence against women. The Jeane Kirkpatrick Award is presented to women who've made outstanding contributions to the advancement of women in politics and civil society. There are few such women who by their vision, words, and actions have made as remarkable an impact as the Congresswoman. So it's my great honor. I'm going to ask you to come so that I can honor you on behalf of all of the people here with the Jeane Kirkpatrick Award.
you. Just don't ask me to put any living flowers on it because it's not going to last long. But thank you so much. What a tremendous honor. And to receive this honor that has the name of such an incredible woman, Jeane Kirkpatrick, has a special place in my heart. But I'm honored and I'm greatly humbled by this very prestigious award. I'd like to thank IRI, the Women's Democracy Network, my friend Lauren, thank you for the plug for having me get this award, and all of the IRI members and staff for your efforts on behalf of liberty and human rights throughout the world. And I do not feel that I can rightly accept it for myself, but will instead do so on behalf of all of those in every corner of the world, women, men, and children who are still suffering under repressive and oppressive regimes. These brave individuals, and you know them and you've met them, they struggle every day to defend their rights, to uphold their dignity as human beings, and how difficult it is for them, and how lightly we take that liberty here in the United States. So that honor belongs to them. They are the unsung heroes. And the name of this award, as I say, means so much to me. It means a lot to our entire Cuban American community. Jeane Kirkpatrick was more than just a faithful servant to the cause, an influential woman, a very famous woman on the world stage. She was an inspirational leader. She was best known for her vigorous promotion of American interests. We always use her phrase that she used so well, that there's always a crowd of people who are the blame America first crowd. Jeane Kirkpatrick would never be in that crowd. And her unflinching opposition to communism, and one of my favorite photos is there she is with one of the first leaders after the Contra War in Nicaragua. She's a real hero throughout Latin America, especially in those lands that were previously ruled by thugs and communist leaders. She was a tireless champion of freedom in all countries, deeply believed that the time was on democracy's side, was always optimistic, even in countries that were ruled by the most despotic of regimes and leaders. She knew that democracy would one day come, and she was regarded as a tireless and focused leader in pursuing liberty for all who were denied their most basic fundamental rights. But that toughness grew out of loyalty to principle, and that really formed her for many decades, and it framed her thoughts and her observations. It's amazing, Lauren, that book that you held up about political women. What year was that, did you say? It was unbelievable. And she had this clarity of vision because she understood what was going on in every corner of the world. And my commitment, however, I do not want to put myself in that category of a Jeane Kirkpatrick, but my commitment to those same principles, which she upheld so well, grew out of my life experiences. Connie so nicely talked to this great audience. I was born in Cuba, as you heard, and came to the United States at the age of 8, just a little while ago. And my family was forced into exile, but happy to come to this great experiment in democracy that we call home. And we saw what the Castro dictatorship began in its cruelty against the Cuban people that continues sadly to this day, 50 years later. And some would say we lost everything, that we lost our property, we lost our friends, our way of life, but we didn't. We found a new home. I see it differently. We didn't lose it. We preserved our most precious resource and our most valuable possessions, our dignity, our principles, and our freedom. Freedom that we have here in this wonderful country. And my family and I were fortunate to have been able to turn to the United States that is still a generous nation to hundreds and thousands, and we see it in my district, and Paul is a part-time resident there in Surfside, whether they come from Haiti, whether they come from Cuba, whether they come from Nicaragua, we open our arms to all of them, and I'm proud to serve and defend those principles that Jeane Kirkpatrick lived every day of her life in my humble role as ranking member on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And what an incredible opportunity. And what does this say about this great country? I came here when I was 8, literally not knowing a word of English. Now, my political opponents say I'm still trying to master the language, but to think when I see that Capitol dome lit up, and when I have the opportunity to speak before my colleagues about the burning issues of the day, that I came here with nothing except this country has given to all of us so much, and we have so much to thank for what we have. But those opportunities exist only in free societies, in democratic societies, in open societies, and freedom throws open the doors of opportunity to everyone. Opportunities that would otherwise be closed to them or reserved only for the favored few. And we know those countries that, yes, you have educational opportunities, you have opportunities to have many different types of careers, but you have to be from the right family and you have to go to the right schools. But I've been guided throughout my professional career by that knowledge, and long ago determined to use the freedom that God had given to me and the opportunities that were given to me by this wonderful country. I've been afforded those rights and those responsibilities to help others free themselves from the shackles of tyranny, free themselves from oppression in any form. And an issue of particular concern to me is modern-day slavery that we think doesn't exist, but it exists all around us, and that is human trafficking, a major human rights violation that disproportionately victimizes women and girls. Millions are trafficked within their own countries. Hundreds of thousands are taken across international borders every year. It is estimated that 80% are women, and half of those are children. The numbers do not even convey the human horrors that lay behind them, the lives that are destroyed, the childhoods that are stolen. In Iran, large numbers of children are forced into sexual slavery and involuntary servitude, while Iranian girls are taken into Pakistan and other countries. In Syria, women from Asia, from Eastern Europe and Iraq are forced to work as domestic servants and prostitutes. Closer to home, in my native homeland of Cuba, Cuba has become a popular destination for sexual tourism, and it's advertised as such on the internet. And this is exploiting large numbers of Cuban girls and boys, some as young as 10, 11, 12 years of age. In China, it is estimated that up to 90% of North Korean women refugees are forced to become prostitutes or sold into forced marriages in China. And the list goes on and on. It's a long list, and it's depressing, but it's real. And while there has been some progress, there has been great progress, but we must do more, so much more in fighting this tragic reality. And I use my position as ranking member of this committee to continue to ensure that we can pass legislation that moves us forward on this issue until this blight upon humanity is forever ended. and the mission statement of the Women Democracy Network, that a full and robust democracy depends on the equal participation of women. Well, the Women Democracy Network says it all. It's as once simple yet profound. And we all know that the status of women varies dramatically from country to country, but the real divide is between those societies that are free and those that are not. And I can think of few images that capture that truth more clearly than what we saw in the first election of Iraq. Those Iraqi women smiling broadly for the cameras and proudly holding up their thumbs when their fingers dyed purple, signifying that they had voted in that country's first real election. Mr. Ambassador, that purple finger says it all. And we know that yesterday, as the ambassador said, courageous Iraqi women once again demonstrated their unwavering commitment to a stable Iraq, to a free Iraq, to a democratic and prosperous future for their country and for their children, either as candidates or as active citizens ready to cast their ballots for these parliamentary seats. They were undeterred by the violent extremist attacks that were underway. And I believe that women everywhere were sharing in their joy yesterday, in their courage, in facing extraordinary dangers, and in every step that they have taken, they have come and they have walked with women everywhere. And they will continue to do so, and they will continue to make history as they march every day closer and closer to an ever stable and ever freer Iraq. And so to the people of Iraq and to the people of Afghanistan, to the women especially in all of those corners, to the human rights dissidents, to the democracy advocates around the world, to the Cuban prisoners of conscience like Orlando Zapata Tamayo, a simple bricklayer who died last week from a hunger strike protesting the terrible conditions in Castro's jail, to the brave women of Las Damas de Blanco, who every week dress in white to protest in favor of freedom and democracy, where that is a sin and that is indeed a crime in Castro's Cuba. To them, I dedicate this wonderful award because they are and they will always be, as Jeane Kirkpatrick was, an inspiration for me and for all of us who value freedom, who value liberty, and who always will continue to fight the good fight for decency, for liberty, and for human rights. Muchísimas gracias y muy agradecida.